It is the couple of days before the Auburn's next home game, Game 5, to be exact. Auburn versus Oklahoma. That means on a Thursday evening, it's time for us to preview it. Not just preview, but to predict it. We are going to predict not just the scores. We're going to talk through a lot of different scenarios to help you have a more well-rounded, more informed score prediction. Let's get into all those different things right now. War Eagle, everybody, welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you are watching live or on the replay, we appreciate you being here, hanging out with us, spending some time being a part of our little family within the Auburn family. We like to get together on Thursday evenings before a football game and talk about that football game, a preview, a prediction show. It's all encompassed in one here. That's what's on store for you today. We'll talk a little bit more about what we got coming up here, but want to start off by officially welcoming you to the show. Please do make sure as you are coming in live or on the replay that you smash that like button if you enjoy our content, and let us know that you're here if you're watching live by posting maybe where you're watching from. And then also you can just join in on the conversation. This is an interactive show after all. If you're watching live, if you're on the replay, you can certainly interact. We won't be able to interact back all that much, but you're welcome to do so. Excuse me, if you would like to do that this evening. So a lot of you are familiar with how we do this here. Some of you may not be, but let me go ahead and address this for everybody, whether you are new or not. We're not going to be able to do the show exactly like we normally do for our preview and prediction show for each week. I am obviously not in studio, nor am I in a place where I have the setup that I normally would have to do this show the way that I like to do that. So please do keep that in mind, that if there is elements of the show that are missing tonight, such as some of the things we won't be able to bring up normally that we might, or it really is much of it, that's what's going on this evening. We're going to do our best to keep you informed. So how does this work? We start off by previewing the matchup, giving you some information to know about Auburn, about Oklahoma, about injuries, all that kind of thing, things around the game to know before we start walking into our predictions show, part of the show. So that should be about the last 2/3 of the show when we get into all of that here in just a little bit. So if you're antsy to share your score prediction, I'm going to ask you to hold it to the end, to the very end of the show. We will get there. Settle down. Some of y'all are like always chomping at the bit to do that. We'll get there if we can. I'd like to start off by thanking and welcoming a lot of our people who are here live. Thank you so much, everybody, for checking in early and hanging out with us this evening. As a point of reference for what's going on currently in the world and the Southeast, I hope everybody is staying safe and dry with the hurricane that is rolling through right now and hitting, I think, as we speak, making landfall, or at least soon will be, if it's not already, in the Panhandle region of Florida, that little spot right over there in Apalachicola and stuff. So please stay safe out there if you're in the path of it. I'm lucky enough to not be in the direct path of it, but if you are a believer and a praying person, I ask you to selfishly pray for the city of Atlanta, well, Georgia in general, but the city of Atlanta, which is not too far from where my wife and everybody live, and my mother-in-law. So we're just obviously hoping everybody stays safe tonight, and we all can have a good day tomorrow when everything starts to clear up in the Southeast. Anyway, all right, all of that stuff out of the way. Let's start giving you some information, okay? Let's jump into it, and let's start talking about this particular matchup that we definitely want to talk about in a little bit more detail. So again, I won't be able to bring up every single thing we normally do on the show, but we will have a lot of it. So let's go ahead and get in here and show you what we can show you. This is, as we typically see each week, is provided by Auburn Athletics to the media, but you can go find this. You have to search for it a little bit on their website if you're curious about it. But this is a good informational sheet that they put out each week. Most places do something like this. In fact, Oklahoma had a pretty extensive one. I made the decision not to include theirs this week. Because I didn't have as much time to go through it as I'd like to not just have to repeat a bunch of stuff, but also because we are in a different spot in my capabilities of, I know it doesn't seem like it would be that hard, but it's limiting this week is going to be a good thing for what's going on. So let's look at the sheet a little bit. We'll start by looking at the first page. I got three that I want to show you. Obviously, you can zoom in or pause if you need to and check out what's going on the sheet. I've highlighted some probably the most important things out there that are of note. We'll walk through a few of these. Obviously, the game is at 2:30 Central Time on ABC, so it's a major network game, probably the big game for them of the midday portion for ABC. Auburn versus Oklahoma. This is a matchup that all of us have had marked for quite some time now. A lot of us have really looked forward to this just because of the novelty factor of it. But Auburn people are probably have had this one circled because they want revenge, sweet, sweet revenge. Because if you'll look at some of the things that aren't even highlighted there, they are currently 2-0 against us, having played us a long time ago, but also most recently in the Sugar Bowl, which we are not going to talk about because I was there and it was a fun trip, but it was also a bad trip too for a lot of reasons, even outside football. So that is kind of some of the history there and where the game is going to play. We know it's in Jordan here, all that kind of stuff. Scroll through and look at it if you want to see like your broadcast team, all that kind of stuff, where to keep up to date with all things, the radio and everything. Obviously, if you look at how things are currently Oklahoma will be Auburn's first ranked matchup of the season. The very first one. All 4 opponents so far have not been ranked. This one will be. Auburn is not ranked, clearly. And you can see Hugh Freeze's record, total record for the year. Same thing for Coach Venables for Oklahoma over his time at Oklahoma, his 3rd season. And then their current record this year, having just lost to Tennessee. So they've been a pretty good team all year, 21 in AP, 18 in the coaches. So it's going to be a challenge for Auburn to get the win here and see what's going on. Fans are asked to wear orange. So I understood the assignment. I like to say that I planned it this way. It's just what I literally grabbed out of my travel bag. It worked out that it was orange. So please do wear orange to the game if you can. Show those Sooners what a real good looking color looks like. A couple of the other recognitions that are going to happen. I forgot to highlight that part, but the men's golf team, your national champion golf team, 2024 SEC tournament champion men's basketball team, and you'll see Charles Barkley and Will Hastings being honored for some awards that they won. Looking down at the bottom of that sheet, you'll see some factors that I think that they're glad that they include for kickoff coverage. They kind of put some things into perspective because you're going to hear a lot of these common threads and narratives and probably some of our chats tonight, but in general about the defense is horrible, the offense is horrible. This would show you in some areas it's not as horrible as you think it is, but obviously it's within the context of everything else going on. Here's some things to think about. Auburn is currently 7th nationally in red zone defense. 7th nationally in red zone defense. Another note, Keandre Lambert-Smith ranks 2nd nationally in yards per reception, 28.17. It's pretty incredible. His 156 yards against Arkansas was the 14th best receiving performance in Auburn history. So for those of you that say that Auburn has no great wide receiver history, he's been doing pretty good, and he's still only 14th, so that kind of disproves that. His 5 receiving touchdowns are tied for 4th nationally in most in the SEC. So he is definitely the probably brightest spot of this team thus far, living up to all the expectations into the hype. Auburn leads the SEC and ranks 5th nationally in yards per completion. So we are moving the ball through the air and completing the ball through the air pretty effectively. The Tigers rank 6th nationally in net punting. I think we talked about this one last week, but it just goes to show you that even when we are having to punt away, that we are doing a very good job of not just punting it, but covering it too. And then don't miss the fact that SEC Nation will be here this weekend. The show SEC Nation will be here on Saturday, but the broadcast unit team will be there Friday. Paul Feinbaum will be here, Marty McGee before SEC Nation. So you got Oklahoma. You got humongous recognitions happening at this game. You have got other sports really kicking into high gear that are going to be on campus around all of this. And you got just Auburn versus Oklahoma for the very first time in Jordan here. If you can't get excited about this weekend, then you have no pulse, because I don't care what the results have been thus far for the season for either team. You should be excited about this. Let's take a quick look at the depth chart as is listed in the media provided material. Again, you'll see, you make of it what you will. You'll see that Hank and Peyton are both listed as an or situation at quarterback. I bet it's just going to be a game time decision. You know, I say that the decision's probably been made. We're just not going to know it until game time. But feel free to take a look at that, see how all that shakes out. We'll look at the, I won't bring it up, but I will show you the injury report in just a little bit and talk about that too. But I wanted to give you a second to look at the depth chart if you were interested in that. And then I like this portion of the sheet as well. You can look at the series history and stuff if you're interested in that. It's not much history, 2-0 for them. And, you know, so it's not a lot to talk about. We'll look down there at the bottom to compare a few things. Let's look at this. Auburn is getting 36.5 points per game. So we're underneath that mark set by OC Derek Nix, but the opponents are only scoring 16.8 this season. Defense doesn't look all that terrible when you put it in the grand scheme of things. Compare that to Oklahoma. They are scoring 33.7, but they are even better on defense, it seems like. 11.3 is their points that they're allowing to their opponents. So think about it that way. Kind of use that in how you're thinking about your scoring. It's pretty comparable when you think about it. Proportionately, Auburn scores more points. They allow a few more points. And however you'd like to look at that. And you can look up and down this list too to kind of find some things comparatively, how it all shakes down. They are rushing 159 per game, throwing 166. So extremely balanced, 325 total yards of total offensive per game. Auburn's is 462. Time of possession more in their favor, but not like a huge difference there. So some really interesting facts there that are going to inform, hopefully, your decisions about this outside of emotion. You can look at this as well and talk about, who the leaders are and stuff like that. We'll bring that up again in just a second, but just something for you to look at and view for a little bit. So, like I said, normally I like to have for you the Oklahoma version of this page. Don't have that for you today, so I do apologize, but wanted to at least talk through the Auburn portion of that to start off with. We will, however, not that. I'm going to bring this one up to the field. We are going to talk about Auburn versus Oklahoma on ESPN and the injury report here in just a little bit. Trying to turn the page off here for you guys and make sure you can see what I'm wanting you to see. It's giving us a little bit more. This is what I told you that I was a little bit frustrated with. There we go. The setup that I have to work with today, because it's excuse me, it's a little bit worse than I normally would. I'm not going to make things as clean and neat. But there you go. On ESPN, your kickoff time, your matchup, who's ranked, who's not, ABC, ESPN Plus. You can see the passing leaders. You can see the rushing leaders. You can see the receiving leaders on there. What I would note is I think that the only things on this page that are a sure thing are Jarquez Hunter and Keandre Lambert-Smith, because Burks is on the injury possibility list. I believe Arnold is the one that was the quarterback that was getting replaced in this next game by the freshman, and Peyton Thorne is just up in the air about what he will do as if he'll be the starter or not. The matchup predictor as of this Thursday evening is 57.4 in Oklahoma's favor. I would say I'm not shocked with that whatsoever, just because of how things have gone. But if you go back up here, where is it at? The line. See, they move things around. There it is right there. The line is, or not the line, the spread is 1 point. That has actually gone down since we got together and talked last. I mean, it was 3, I think, earlier this week. It is on this Thursday evening down to a point differential of a spread. Do with that information what you will. If you value that information, there it is for you. Let's see if there's anything else to take of note on ESPN. We've talked about the leaders. You can look at their last couple of games to see who they've beaten. They have beaten Temple, Houston, barely. They have beaten Tulane by enough, and then they lost to Tennessee. I'm going to make this point, folks. This is very comparable with Auburn right now. I think the only difference that you're really seeing in Auburn and Oklahoma, a major difference, is probably the fact that we have our starting wide receiver not questionable, or our best wide receiver not questionable. Because look at their matchups. If you look at that, they whooped up on somebody they should have to start the season. Struggled against Houston, maybe nearly lost. We did lose in a struggle. They beat somebody they should have, probably how they should have, but not as impressively as maybe they would, as you'd think. New Mexico could have made that case for us in the game. And then you lost to an opponent in the SEC. So it's not a perfect comparison, but it's definitely kind of interesting when you look at it. This is why we like to talk about it. Excuse me, before we go into our predictions portion of the show, because I think that is important to talk about a little bit. I'll let y'all look at that a little bit more. Let me bring up to you guys the injury report. They have a long, extensive injury report. In fact, can I don't know if I can share that with you guys. Oh, no, it's not on there. See, I told you my new thing is, or my thing tonight's messed up a little bit. I think the most important thing from that injury report this week is Deion Burks, their wide receiver, their arguably their best one, is listed as questionable. Now, questionable can mean a bunch of different things. It can mean we literally just do not know. They are not going to play him, and they're just trying to leave the option out there. Or, it could be a number of different other things. But normally questionable literally could go any other way. But that could be a good sign for Auburn. For the injury report for Auburn, it's not that bad, to be honest with you. There were only 6 listed, and 3 we knew were going to be out. The other are listed as questionable: Isaiah Rakes, Alex McPherson, who we haven't had all season, and then Isaiah Miller, who's been struggling with some injuries at right tackle. So when you think about all those things, the injury report, I think, is very much in Auburn's favor, because I didn't even read off of all of Oklahoma's. But just something to keep in mind, information for you to think about as we move into our predictions portion of the show. So let's do it. Let's move into the predictions portion of the show a little bit quicker than we normally would, because I don't have as much to talk with you guys about this evening. Again, I thank you for your patience with being in a new setup and a new place for just this one time. Well, for now, for this one time. I'm probably will be back here in the future for travel purposes. All right. So how we do this for the rest of the show. For the rest of the show, we are going to dive into predictions across a variety of different things. So please, 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 please hold those score predictions till the end of the stream. If you can do that, that will be very helpful. Things won't get clustered and all. Kevin didn't listen to us. Love you, Kevin. Kevin's one of our longtime viewers. He gets so excited about things. He's our eternal optimist too. But please do, for the rest of you guys, save those score predictions until the end of the show, and we'll get into it. I know I say this every single week. Probably I do, or some way of phrasing this. I have no clue where to go, because I've been saying for the last couple of days on a couple of streams here that I don't feel comfortable predicting Auburn to win this game. But when you look at some of these stats, when you talk about some of the injuries that are out there, it really starts to change your perspective a little bit. And I'm having this happen right now live while we're doing this. So I think that's important, why we always need to kind of walk through these things and talk through these things and not just operate off of emotion. So we're going to go through offense. We're going to go through defense. We're going to go through special teams. And then, and only then, will I ask for your final scores. What I would like for you all to do as a warm-up, we did this last week, is will you, how did I ask this last week? Because people got contentious with how I asked it. The spread is 1 point in Auburn's favor, or in Oklahoma's favor. I guess, will you take that? I don't know. Yes or no. If that's how I'm supposed to ask that, I don't get all of those things and get on there. Now, Neil, I know you're trying to be funny. Let's not start that tonight, buddy. Let's not start that. Don't be, you cause some trouble sometime. I know you're over there sitting antsy a little bit because of the hurricane coming through. Don't be causing a hurricane in here. I guess is that's the questions I'm supposed to have. Yes or no, will you take that spread? Anyway, no, Neil, no, Neil. We're not going to start that stuff tonight. All right, come on now. None of that. Be better than that, buddy. Be better than that. Cam Coleman will score 5 touchdowns. All right, how about this? Let me ask you guys with this question. Who will score first, Auburn or Oklahoma? Who will score first, Auburn or Oklahoma? Auburn or Oklahoma? Type that in the chat right now. This is just your warm-up question. It's going to throw me off when y'all write okay in there. So Oklahoma, Auburn. Okay, we got a few Auburns. Good to see. Anybody else? I think that's maybe everybody. Oklahoma, okay. All right. Well, it looks like Oklahoma is expected to score first on that. So that was your warm-up question. The rest of these are throughout the offense, defense, special teams categories. Let's walk through each of them right now. Let's start on offense. I want to know how many passing yards and passing touchdowns will Auburn have in this game? And don't do this crap where if Peyton or Hank or somebody else, just how many are we going to have? It's not play semantics, be cutesy, all that stuff. How many passing yards and how many passing touchdowns will Auburn have in this game? Whatever that means to you. I think I am not very high on us scoring passing touchdowns right now. To me, it's a little bit scary of a notion. Now, when we talked about some of those stats in the earlier part of the show, it would lead you to believe that things are going pretty well passing wise outside of throwing interceptions. And that's probably the case too. But that still means you got to complete in the end zone. So you can complete all you want outside the end zone. If it's not going to go into the end zone, that's going to change things drastically for you. Kevin says 5 for 300 yards, always the optimist. 112, and it's a very specific number. 2 exactly the same here. WT says 115 and 1 passing touchdown. I think we go run heavy. Well, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. I think we will score 1 passing touchdown and probably will throw at least for 200. I would say 220. We have been doing a good job of getting the ball to people, getting it, yards after completion, getting completions, but it just hasn't amounted in more. There should be more for all those efforts, shouldn't it? I think, at least I feel like there should be. So let's think about it that way. All right, let's move to the rush attack. This is where a lot of people want to go, where we think we should go. How many rushing yards and how many rushing touchdowns will Auburn have in this game? How many rushing yards and how many rushing touchdowns will Auburn have in this game? Auburn football, Auburn's offense. How many touchdowns? How many rushing yards? Now, I think, let me talk about it from this angle. I think a lot of people assume that the conditions that are happening this evening and up until tomorrow morning and what will be left over after all that rain is somehow going to play as big a factors as I think some of y'all don't understand how good major football fields are at draining and grounds crew are. I'm not saying it's not going to be some residue of that still left over, but I don't think it's going to play a major factor. So if you're someone that is thinking that the weather is going to play a huge factor in this game, I would ask you to probably rethink that. That's just my opinion. You don't have to hold it. But that's how I feel about it. Corey says that OK has the best run defense in the nation. I didn't see that on that sheet. Of course, I didn't look into it all that much. So we'll keep that in mind if that's a real thing or not. So we got a couple predictions coming in here. Everybody thinks kind of across the board here with what everybody is predicting here. Kind of, yeah, what I was saying. I don't think it's going to matter all that much. Kevin wants 200 yards and 5 passing touchdowns. So we know Kevin's our eternal optimist. He has predicted 10 touchdowns, 5 passing and 5 rushing. We have that day. I better not hear a dang complaint from anyone. I don't care if we throw 5 interceptions. If we throw 5 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns, we're going to be just fine. We're going to just be just fine. Rushing wise, Jarquez has had one of his characteristic games. Damari has run well, but they both have struggled to hold on to the ball this year. I get the feeling that Jeremiah is going to be utilized more and more as time goes on, especially with the other guys having struggles hanging on to the ball. So I'm going to say that we rush for 250 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. 250 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Cole, come on, Cole. Don't be such a negative Nancy. Nobody asked about fumbles or anything yet. Just hold on. We're going to talk about that. I'll have to be, your eternal state doesn't have to be negative, guys. So that's what I'll think about that. All right, next question for you. Here's a negative one. Or maybe it's not negative because it hasn't happened a whole lot. How many sacks will Auburn allow on its quarterbacks in this game? And keep in mind, we're talking about a fairly, what seems to be even matchup. Auburn has done an okay job when we look at the totality of the season thus far, protecting the quarterback. Early on, I would say that was very questionable, whether they were protecting the quarterback. But how many sacks do you think Auburn will allow in this game? What number pops into your head? 6, 3, 4, 5. Kevin says none. There you go. Good question. Depending on what offense they're going to run, I guess 7. Seems like quite a high amount, but if they've got a good run defense, means they probably have got a good rush attack. Could be if what is true and what people are saying here, what others I've seen say is true about their run defense, their defense as a whole. This will be a really good test to see, has the offensive line taken that step forward? I'm not asking for them to be amazing, but I am simply asking for them to continue to make steps forward. So we'll see if that continues. All right, Neil. Look, buddy, I'm putting you in timeout. I'm sorry. We can't deal with that the entire night. Can't be negative the entire night. You can get offended if you want, but that's been enough of that. Get another cell phone and pull it up. You telling me to get another cell phone and pull it up? If you understood what was going on here behind the scenes, like, it's just, no, it's not going to happen right now. All right. Let's see here. Let's keep moving along. How many turnovers will Auburn have in this game? So this is your opportunity to talk about those things. How many turnovers will Auburn have in this game? Neil's missing his opportunity because he didn't know how to behave. I love you, dude, but it got a little out of hand. How many turnovers is Auburn going to have in this game? What do you think? 6, 1, 3, 2, 1. I think it's very likely we will throw an interception just based on past performances. I think it's very likely that we will have a fumble just based on past performances. So I think if you're someone that's at least thinking a interception and a fumble, then you're probably going to be correct. I think I would not like to go super pessimistic here, but I just get the sense that we're going to have 3 turnovers in this game. So I will go the easy route and predict 2 interceptions and 1 fumble. But I think the fumble is going to come by way of not a running back and not a quarterback situation. I get the sense that we're due for one of those situations where a wide receiver is running down the field and someone comes up behind him and pops it loose. Kind of similar to what happened to Jarquez, where he just ripped it clean at the end. OU is going to bring the heat and the wood. So they're making a fire is what you're telling me, right? Robert thinks that we're cleaning up the fumbles this week and give up an interception. I hope we clean it all up. But I'm also trying to be a realist, and the trend has been we are going to do these things every game. So I have to also take away my optimistic side and just look at what the trend is too. And I think that's what the trend is going to be. All right. This is an easy question, most likely, but I'm always going to throw it out there just in case, because I think it's worth a question. It's a question worth having, because if Peyton does play in it, if he is the starting quarterback, and if he does have a very well-rounded game, he is a big threat to contribute. So who is going to be your leading rusher in this game? And you might even have an injury happen. You might have someone have a breakout game. Some of you have been been begging for Jeremiah Cobb to get a lot more action in these games. Who would be your leading rusher in this game? Is it just simply Jarquez, or is there anybody else that you would like to go out on the limb and say is going to be the leading rusher? I'll just be forward with mine. It's going to be Hunter. I think that's the easy thing to do. I don't think there's an indication any other way. Corey wants a redemption story for Damari after that fumble last week. Hunter, Sean Jackson. Sean Jackson is going to be our leading rusher, Kevin. Kevin, your optimism is high. Although I would say if Jackson is our leading rusher, that means we had a ton of injuries or we were having a ton of fumbles from everybody else. And that meant he was the only one that could be trusted with the football. I would love it. I love me some Sean Jackson. I just don't know that that's going to happen, buddy. All right. I figured that was a pretty easy one. Who is the top receiver for Auburn in this game? This one also might be very easy to predict. And it's also a little bit subjective too, because do you consider the top receiver the one who has the most completions or the most receptions, the one who has the most yards, and the one who has the most touchdowns? Sometimes those all correlate together. Sometimes it doesn't. I think the easy answer is to go out and say KLS, and you're probably going to be right. But you have to remember, this is a decent defense, and they're seeing exactly what we're seeing, that the offense, the passing game, is running through KLS. Cam Coleman is not on the injury list this week, is supposedly going to be, I would say maybe full speed. Is he a factor in all of this? A lot of KLSs. One Simmons, Cam Coleman, Kevin saying everybody. There you go. Another KLS. Question: when you run a receiver on a jet sweep, does that make him a running back? It does. It does, which is why these are questions like that are the reason I still ask the question, who is going to be your leading rusher? Because you might have someone run a jet sweep and run it 100 yards, and then they're the leading rusher. It's very unlikely that they're going to lead it, but yes, they would be considered the leading rusher at that point as a wide receiver. Now, don't you miss the days where we had now Malcolm Simmons is close, a Anthony Schwartz who would just fly, on those jet sweeps. Those were some fun days. We got a Fairweather shout out. I think it's fair to say, and I think he would agree with it too, that Rivaldo's had a very modest start to his year. Only one touchdown. Yeah. A lot of drops, and he's even called out his own drops, so I'm not even saying anything that he hasn't said himself, which so I would, if Rivaldo is having a much better game this go round, I would feel very good about this particular game. All right. Last one in the offensive category. What will be the third down percentage for Auburn's offense in this game? So for every time they have a third down, how many times are they completing that? What say you? Keep in mind, Auburn's been able to move the ball more often than not, which means that we're either completing or neither not getting to third down, getting there to that third down percentage, or completing that third down, or completing on fourth down, which we've done as well. So what is going to be our third down percentage on offense? This is a request that someone put in. Ironically enough, I think it was Neil who suggested this one. Neil's either still in timeout or he's left because he got mad because I did it to him, but it called for it tonight. 50, 40, 34, 40, 34, 70, 100, 45%. So outside of Kevin and Robert, Jay was 50%. Nobody's really on the positive side about our third down percentage. It's Jay. I don't know. Jay, I don't know how long you've been here. Kevin is our eternal optimist. He's the one that when we talk about averaging out some of these things, he's always the one that brings the curve up for everybody. That's why we love him. So yes, I think it'll be a little bit better than 50%. I'm going to say 60%. I do think we're going to run into some challenges, but I do think that we're going to benefit from playing at home, as we typically do. Maybe the results haven't shown that yet, but we tend to have some success from playing at home. All right, so that's your offensive side of the ball. Let's keep moving forward into defense. So some similar questions to start off. How many passing yards and how many passing touchdowns will Oklahoma have in this game? How many passing yards and how many passing touchdowns will Oklahoma have in this game? This is one of those crucial questions we ask that help you start thinking about your score. Does it, or what that score you've already thought about to yourself, does it justify from when we talk about these things? If you remember when we looked at the comparative stats, wasn't a lot of differential between their passing and their rushing attack. They are starting a new quarterback who seems to look more like a runner. So how does that shape out your question there? Stan, that's all right. Thanks for being here. And that is his prediction for us. But thanks for being here as long as you could, buddy. So we got your 24-16 prediction. Everybody else, hold yours. Hold it. Hold what you got. 230, 2 touchdowns, 210, 175. So everybody's kind of near 200 passing yards. 2 touchdowns. So it looks like we almost have an average thus far of Kevin with 50 yards and 1 touchdown, our optimist, bringing the bell curve better for us. And this is where it's a struggle, because with their leading receiver down on the road, their first SEC road game, I think that's a huge, huge storyline here. I'm not saying somebody else won't step up for them, but when you counteract that with, excuse me, when you counteract that with this new quarterback, probably going to want to run him more, I don't know that they're going to have a lot of success passing. And as some of you would say, well, our DBs are a little bit, so I'm struggling where to go on this one. 180, 1 touchdown. 180, 1 touchdown. All right, let's keep moving forward. How many rushing yards and how many rushing touchdowns for Auburn? Oh, no, I'm sorry, not for Auburn, for Oklahoma in this game. This is where I think we're going to get some interesting takes on this, because I think we're all buying into the hype of this kid being, and some of y'all probably saw the game as well, him being able to use his legs, which made him a bit more of a challenge. Auburn just played somebody who uses their legs a lot, and it wasn't as, deadly as it could have been. So what do you think? Auburn showed a pretty good ability to contain somebody for the most part. Now, Those third and longs were very frustrating at times. Only a couple of them were on with his legs. What do you think? How many rushing yards? How many rushing touchdowns? Tim is high on their rushing attack. 3 touchdowns and 265. If they get 3 rushing touchdowns, we're cooked. I think we're cooked if they're scoring 3 rushing touchdowns. 165 and 223 touchdowns. And Jay is now going the Kevin route with 75 and 0 touchdowns. Is that a serious one? Because Kevin says no touchdowns either. Jay, are you serious? You serious, Clark? You serious, Jay? I think they will at least get 215 yards on the ground and 2 rush. Trying to think. 2 rushing touchdowns. 2 rushing touchdowns. I'm going to say that. Jay is riding with Kevin. You know, see, here's the thing. We all say that we should be more like Kevin because it's much more enjoyable to be around people like Kevin because they're just happy all the time. Well, Jay, if it's an Auburn loss at the end, then I don't know why you're here, my friend, because we're going to have a good time and not be such a Debbie Downer, unless you're not an Auburn fan just here to troll. But you're welcome to be here, but don't be a Debbie Downer. We're just having some fun here. All right. Who is going to be Auburn's top tackler in this game? Who will be Auburn's top tackler? I think if I remember, and I might be able to give you guys that information very quickly. Let's see if I can pull it off without messing it up. Your top tackler for Auburn currently is Jaron Thompson with 22 and Dorian Mausi with 20, actually tied with Jalen McLeod. So you've got a linebacker, a defensive back. A defensive back leads the way, and a edge rusher linebacker type is tied with that linebacker. So who's going to be Auburn's leading tackler? A lot of us have been predicting Asante recently, and it hasn't really worked out that way. I don't think that means that's a reflection on him. I just think we all assume because he's just the loud vocal leader of the team that that's how it's going to be. Falk, number 9, Asante. There's another Asante, a Falk. So those are the 2 that we probably see the most, and that's probably where my default is to go to. But let's look at some of these stats. Jaron Thompson leading the way. Some people would make a case, and they probably are right, that that's not a good sign for the defense if they are leading in that. We got a McLeod shout out with 8 tackles. It does feel like we're due for Jalen McLeod to have one of those big, big games. So I do like that pick a lot. In my perfect world, I'd love to see one of our, not our interior guys, but maybe like a, if Isaiah Rakes was here, I feel like this, he's listed as questionable. I feel like this would be a game where he might rake up a little bit. I am going to go with what our stats currently are listed at. I'm going to go Dorian Mausi as the leading tackler for us. Falk is NFL material. And Jay, I would agree with you here, not just because of his production on the field, but because of the young man he appears to be. And I just said young man, and that makes me appear very, very old. All right. So DeMarcus Reddick, Kevin wants to give him a shout out. There you go. All right, let's keep moving forward. This one is a conglomeration question. So however you want to answer this, smashed together. Usually I just tell you to answer it in the order that I ask it, so that if you want to just write the numbers, that's fine. But these are all defensive things. We combine it because it just got tedious to go one by one. This is how many sacks, fumbles recovered, and interceptions will Auburn's defense have against Oklahoma? How many sacks, how many fumbles recovered, and how many interceptions will Auburn's defense have against Oklahoma? However you'd like to break that down. Got a mobile quarterback. Going to be hard to bring him down. Keep in mind about that. I haven't looked at their turnover ratio. It can't be as bad as ours, but I would bet you could at least feel more confident about a interception coming into play here with a new quarterback. Fumbles might also be a factor. More people are going to be like some more receivers that don't play as much are going to play because they're lacking in that area a little bit because of some injuries. All of that could be factors to think about. So we got 3 sacks, no fumbles, 1 interception, 5 sacks, 1 fumble, 2 interceptions. Robert, if we get that, I'm going to feel real good about this game. I'm going to feel real dang good about that. 2 sacks, 1 fumble, 1 interception. DJ seems to be extremely cautious with running quarterbacks. And to be fair, it worked against Arkansas, who had the most formidable one we've seen this to date. Now, you would say, obviously, we lost the game, so it didn't work. But based on what we were anticipating with that attack, I would argue it wasn't that bad. We did a decent job of all those things. I'm going to say 2 sacks. Excuse me. Very key and crucial sacks. No fumbles recovered. I think we'll cause some. We're just not that lucky these days. And I would say I'm going to go out on a limb, 2 interceptions. 2 sacks, no fumbles, 2 interceptions. Jaron Thompson going to continue to cook. I think one of these young guys like Kayan Lee, maybe a Crawford if he gets in there. I don't know who's going to be rotating in with some of these injuries we've had with Champ Anthony. I think we're going to get somebody who hasn't had an interception yet. Maybe it's a linebacker. Maybe, the ball gets tipped at the line. And maybe we start getting we put some pressure on him, get hands up in our face, and it tips him, and then a linebacker picks it up. Kevin's calling for 5. My goodness, what a day that would be. All right, our last defensive question. We got to move. How many defensive touchdowns, if any, will Auburn have versus Oklahoma? INT or pick 6, scoop and score. What do you think? This is usually not a very, optimistic category, but what do you think? Robert has 0. Kevin's got 7. Kevin, we get 7 turnover. What was our question? Sorry. Defensive touchdowns. The game is 1. Okay, let me just take stock of what our optimist has said. 7 defensive touchdowns and 10 offensive touchdowns. I think if that happened to Oklahoma at our hands, we revoked their SEC charter. But I'm going to agree with you guys. I don't think there's going to be a defensive touchdown. I would love it, but I don't think it's going to be there. All right, we're now on special teams. Let's rapid fire through this. How many punts will Auburn have in this game? This is a very crucial one for how successful our offense is going. How many times are we punting the ball? Because if you're punting a lot, obviously you're not having a lot of success moving it. But you could also argue if you're not punting a lot, it could be because you're turning the ball over. And not just one person. None of that. How many punts we got in this game? 4, 3, 1, 4, 6 punts. So everybody seems to be on I won't call it the high side, but we're going to be punting a little bit. And this would make sense with a defense like theirs, right? I would not be shocked if we had 4 punts in this game, which is very scary, but I would not be shocked about that. All right, next question in special teams. How many field goals made and attempted? So 1 for 2, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 0 for 4. How many field goals attempted and made by Auburn in this game? I would say that Alex McPherson is not starting. I didn't get any indication from commentary this week that we've made significant progress for him to be ready. So I would think Towns Magoo is going to be the one starting. 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 1 for 1, 7 made. We have had the greatest scoring offense of all time, or just scoring in general, according to Kevin. 4 for 4 WT. Is this because of you don't think we're going to punch it in as much? That's interesting. It's interesting. 5 for 5 from Kevin. That's quite a little bit there. All right. How many of those? I'm going to say 1 for 1 on field goals. 1 for 1. In Magoo, I trust. Might know where I'm heading with my prediction now based off of that. Any punt returns? Yes or no? Any punt returns or kick returns for touchdown this game? Anybody feeling positive about that? Anybody feeling like hey, we can do this? Like we're due for that. Keontae Scott came close to doing that had he not stepped out. Jeremiah Cobb has had some pretty good kick returns. So there's been some, positives in that direction. But what do you think? 0, yes, a no. I said yes and no. Everybody's giving me numbers and yeses and nos. Cobb can score at will. 0 kick returns for a touchdown. I think it's going to happen at some point in this game, but this just doesn't feel like the game where we're going to do it. I think we're due. Cobb will do it. If he might be the best one to do it with his dynamic running ability. All right, our final question, and this is not technically special teams, but we include it here. How many penalties and yards will Auburn have in this game? How many penalties, how many yards will Auburn have in this game? Our injuries appear to be pretty good. Isavian is still questionable. I think it was questionable. So that means a little bit of rotation there, but a lot of those guys that have been rotating in. So why am I saying that? I'm thinking about false starts. I'm also thinking about, who may start. And not that I'm predicting that Peyton's going to start, but if Peyton starts, I feel much more confident that he'll have better clock management, all that kind of stuff, which is not a shot at Hank. It's just what we've seen out there on the field. And he's a younger guy. It's not his forte yet. So I'm going to say we don't struggle with like false starts, illegal formations, substitution problems. But I think we're going to definitely get a personal penalty or two because I think things are going to get difficult at some point and tempers are going to flare. So we're probably due for like 2 personal fouls, a pass interference and roughing something, or late hit. So that's 2 and 30 right there. Probably going to be a little bit antsy in this game on defense. So at least 1 offsides. So 3 and 3 and 30. I'm going to say 4 penalties for 50 yards. 4 penalties for 50 yards. That math probably doesn't check out, but I don't want to know. If we can't get the Archie refs, woo! Corey says 11 for 185 yards. We love our penalties. The sad thing, Corey, is you're not that far off. And of course, Kevin says no penalties. All right, folks. We have made it to the end of the show. We have made it through offense, through defense, through special teams, all of those different things. Now the time of the show has arrived. What is your score prediction? Talked about it from 1,000 different angles. We've thought about it. Auburn versus Oklahoma. Who wins and what's the score? What say you? Oh, Kevin's been the Barner of the Year forever. Like that's just hands down. He's already won that for like life. No one can compete with him. All right, we got scores coming in fast. 28-17 OU. Tim not very optimistic about Auburn's chances. Kevin with a very modest score for Kevin's standards. Another 28, similar to Tim here, 28-14. AU 24-17, 38-23 Oklahoma. A lot of you are very optimistic about, I think, Oklahoma's offensive chances in this game. I'm not saying that you should think we should win the game, but I'm intrigued by this. 41-21. I hope y'all are wrong. If you're right, we're in for a bad way. 21-7 Auburn. I have gone back and forth on this, and it's kind of like how I told you guys at the start of the show. I've all week kind of operated that I was going to pick Oklahoma to win this, and I still might here. I'm literally thinking about it in my head as I'm talking. That's why I'm stalling. If you went off of what I predicted in like the scoring scenarios, I think I said 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a field goal. So that would be 24 points just based off of that. It doesn't, your score prediction can be different from that. You're just talking about it in the moment. I'm mulling that 24 round in here, thinking about it. I don't really love the sound of that because I really don't love against that defense, even at home, the way we're performing, that we can get 24. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop it down to 23, which means that you forgo a touchdown and we have 3 field goals instead. So that does change things, or I'll call it even a missed extra point or something like that. 23. I do think Oklahoma is going to score a minimum of 3 touchdowns. The question is, and I guess we should have looked at their kicker. Do they get down the field more often than we think than some of us hope that they will? And do they score a bunch of field goals? My gut wants to predict like 23-21 Auburn. But I feel like I'm going to go with the spread. The 24-23 Oklahoma. I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to, with what the line's saying right now, 24-23 Oklahoma. I will go with what my gut has told me all week. I do think this is going to be a much better game for Auburn in the grand schemes, but I think we're not ready to overcome some of those deficiencies completely just yet. I hate it, but 23-20. I wanted to. I was trying to talk myself into that 23-20 score in 21 score in Auburn's favor, but I'm going to say 24-23 Oklahoma wins. All right, so there's your score predictions. We did it. We made it. I got a few more minutes with you guys, so let's take a couple of comments and questions. I've already got a few to go back and address, so go ahead and drop them in now if you'd like for me to talk about anything related to the game. A couple reminders for you. Look, we got a lot going on this weekend. Be back in Auburn tomorrow unless the weather just stalls out and hangs there too long for me to, it's not safe to drive, but I think it's going to be fine. Hope everybody stays safe tonight, but we got tons of content tomorrow. We are possibly going to a Auburn Club rugby match tomorrow. If I've got my information right about when it is and where it is. We are going to go to the set for the Paul Feinbaum show at some point, share, photos from that as well. We're going to be going to volleyball. We're going to be going to equestrian. We're going to be going to eat somewhere. Game day. Y'all know the drill. Tons of stuff. Cocker Club members, y'all are going to get a bunch of other stuff for yourselves. So please do, check your, and that's for the Cocker Club Eagle tier. So do check that if you guys aren't, because there's been some stuff this week that maybe some of y'all have missed that I put in there. And yeah, we'll do Tiger Walk Live post-game show. And we will also do our Auburn Experience live recording from campus, possibly again. That is not confirmed 100% yet, but we may actually do that. All right. Make sure you're following, subscribing, all that good stuff. Let's see what you guys are saying. I'll go back to some of those questions I starred. Robert wants the big win. I want to get Art Austin with a giant horseshoe necklace. That's funny. Y'all give him so much crap for that. 313 wanted to pick us for the win, but couldn't see it, unfortunately. WT, we did make a post about the basketball. Unfortunately, this is a football show, so I'll just let y'all talk about it in there. But it was a very exciting day for that. If I had time today, I probably would have done a stream about it. This didn't work out today. What else? Okay, there were a couple things said earlier. This was from Pam. Okay, so this is a family friend. Got to go back to the old family feeling with AU fans. Where you go? Thanks. Well, thank you for stopping by, Pam. I don't know if you're still here, but that wasn't something we could address back in there. But thank you for stopping by. All right, Jay said earlier, I hope more punts than interceptions. We definitely need to stay away from rolling the dice in such pivotal moment in our season. I do like this comment. I think you should not play scared, but I think you should play smart. the rest of this season. I think you have to play, I want to say conservatively, but I think you have to go with higher percentage shots, as we say in basketball, right? I think that's a fair way to look at it. You want to play the higher percentage shots in this and make sure you capitalize off of those before you start taking some major risk. Unbeaten Lake, we got to handle this weekend first. Don't even worry about that. Don't even worry about it. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. We got enough this weekend. This is one of those, it's an old coach saying one game at a time. Folks, we are at that point. One game at a time. Just settle into it. It's reached that point. Robert, I don't know how long I think you've been here long enough to hear me say something like this. I don't worry about commits, people who haven't committed yet. So I know that's a big thing for a lot of you guys. I don't worry about that. When they commit, we'll certainly talk about them. So I have no opinions about that. If our quarterback who's playing gets on a rhythm and keeps turnovers, I could see us winning. Well, honestly, out of all the discussions that have happened this week about this is the problem, that's the problem, obsessing over whether people should say things or not. So stupid if you're buying into that narrative. Then it's as simple as this. Stop turning over the ball and get off the field on 3rd and long. I'm not even saying get off the field on like 3rd and 4 or 5, because, that's a reasonable, somewhat reasonable thing for that to happen more often than not, that they convert on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5. But beyond that, we should be getting off the field more often than not if we're a better defense than we played like. But hang on to that ball. If you do those two things, this Tigers team is probably undefeated. I'm positive. I think we win this game, and it sets up for a better season than most people think we'll have. Or misspell okay. Where did I misspell it? That's tough, isn't it? That is tough. Yep. Thank you for that. I'll have to go fix that on the post thing. I can't fix it for the live stream, but Corey, just tell me that privately next time. Don't embarrass me in front of everybody. Thank you for pointing that out. It's always something. When you're trying to run all these little different things here, it's tough, man. Robert says, I just wonder why he keeps coming if he's not going to commit, but I agree with you. I'm not going to worry about it. Well, I think you are worrying about it, which is why you're asking about it. So I wouldn't worry about it. I do not let the decisions of 17 and 18-year-old boys run my life. Like it's not that. We have the talent. You just got to execute. And folks, I think this is also something to think about. And I was listening to a good radio show that I love a lot, and they not just sports, but they have very well-rounded conversations about a lot of things in life. And it's honestly, I try to model the way I view things and ask questions about things and talk about things and think about things the way they would. But I would ask you that even if things continue to get worse, to consider this, that the go-to then is, well, it's the coaching's the problem. The coach is the problem. And it very well may be. But you can sometimes be the perfect coach, tell them exactly what to do, show them how to do it, send them through every drill possible that you can. And sometimes they just won't execute that year. Now that would go back to a question of, well, we shouldn't have brought those guys in. And I'm not saying that's what's here, but sometimes it's just, you're having a bad year. Settle in, settle down, and let's just get through the year. It's okay, Kyle. We understand you don't put as much effort into other shows like you do the flagship show. No, when I'm traveling, it's just what happens. Sometimes I miss things like that. A mistake-free game for us. 2 turnovers for OU makes Auburn win. There you go. Robert thinks that we have the right coach, and I think it will prove out in another year or two. There was a good point about this today, that if you listened to Hugh Freeze and the way he spoke about when he first arrived, you could just see the optimism in his face and the way he talked about it. He did his initial press conference, and then he got back in front of the media. I forget when the timing was. I guess it would have been for the start of spring practice. And I could sense a change, not because he made a mistake in coming here, but I think he realized, and he said some phrase that basically said as much, that after taking stock of what was there, he realized how bad off Auburn was. And I think we all can admit, when we take the emotions out of things, and whether you like people being that honest about things, that he was probably right. And so I think that was a signal. He even asked that, I think, at the start of last season. Folks, we're about 4 years away from being and having good recruiting classes with those, from being at a place that's a lot more comfortable. So I know we'd all hope that things would move a lot quicker. It's the Auburn way. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So saddle in, saddle up, all those good things. Yes, I do miss Rod very much. Thank you for helping remember him. All right, folks, I'm getting out of here. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for hanging out and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. Until I talk to you again, thanks for being here, and War Eagle.